Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we are joined by a very special guest. He is an author and motivational speaker, Mr. Chalky White. How you doing today, Chalky?
I'm doing very well, Ryan. Thanks very much for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I'm kind of excited to dig in about your book and everything here.
Me too. Thank you.
So the number one question the audience is probably wondering, who is Chalky White?
Well, Chalky White's an Englishman, but I'm also a United States citizen as well now. I lived in the States for many, many years. And I grew up, unfortunately, through the fire. It definitely refers to me because the start in life I had was pretty awful. I had an extremely wicked father that would not only beat me, but also beat my mother, which I've been able to forgive him for beating me, but not for beating my mother, definitely not. And as a result, my formal education at school was very poor, because what happened was my father always expected me to be this really bright kid that was going to be top of the class all the time and really excel. And I was never going to be, if you like, as a school child, probably not much more than average. And of course, I used to take home 3 school reports, one every semester. And it didn't matter whether the reports were good, bad, or indifferent, I got a beating. So at the age of 13, I quit school, basically. I went on strike at school, literally went on strike, didn't do another stroke. And at the age of 16, I took all the formal exams, all English, math, geography, history, all that stuff, and didn't pass one. And as a result, my father said, well, what are you going to do now? And I just kind of 16, I went to sort of shrug my shoulders. I don't know. Anyway, it was actually his idea. And I joined the police cadets, the Kent Police Cadets, which is a county just south of London. And the great news about that was I got to leave home. So I've been independent ever since I was 16 years old. I've got away from my parents, got away from him. And at the age of 19, I became a police officer in the county of Kent, where I witnessed a murder, which was a very, very bad murder, where a young girl was disemboweled with a knife. And I was also almost murdered twice myself, once with a knife and once by strangulation, both when I was on duty. But all the time I was in the police force, I was only in the police force really because at the age of 16 or 19, I couldn't really think of anything better to do. But I always, all the way through my childhood, all the way through my police service, I was in the police for 9 years till I was 28. I always had this dream of being involved in sports and travel. And then what happened was one day in 1974, I was asked perhaps the most important short question I've ever been asked in my life. And it was, hey, Chalky, you want to go on a ski trip? Well, the good news is I've basically been on a ski trip ever since then, ever since 1974. And so I went on the ski trip and I was terrible. I was probably only ranked maybe 6 out of 9 or 10 in my group. And the next year, though, we went to a place you may have heard of called Andorra, the Principality of Andorra in the Pyrenees Mountains, just north of Barcelona. It's a tiny, tiny little country. It's only 25 miles long. And I saw all these expats there, and they were working in bars and they were working on lifts. And some of them were even ski instructors. And I thought, I wonder if I could ever have some of that. So I'll go back to England, but continued to procrastinate. And I just procrastinated and just couldn't find the guts to get out of the police. And in 1975, in August 1975, I asked myself another very important question. And these questions just, for some, came out of nowhere. Very simple, what if questions. But it was the way that the order in which they're asked in, which made the difference, and the emotional change which came between asking one and then the other. And the first question I asked myself was something like, what if I don't leave the police now and go and do the things that I really want to do, that I've been dreaming of for years and years? What will be the repercussions of that for me? And of course, the biggest answer, the worst answer I came up with of all was regret. That horrible word, regret, which I've always despised. And I felt pretty miserable after getting that answer. But then I asked myself the opposite. But what if I do go and try to achieve my dreams and perhaps even try to become a ski instructor, which eventually I was for 40 years? What then? And the answers I came up with, I loved. Well, the very next morning, I went to my police station and I resigned my post as a police officer right there. That was on the 10th of August, 1975. And I went down to Andorra. Excuse me. I went down to Andorra with a friend of mine, my best friend, Russ. And we got a job working in a restaurant called the Shangri-La, would you believe, which was a Chinese restaurant in Andorra, run by a lady from New Zealand and a gentleman from Colorado, Bill Vernon. And the bad news for them was, this is a bit of an aside, the bad news for them was they had this Chinese restaurant, but one day the Chinese cook, the chef, he left and they couldn't cook Chinese food. So literally overnight, the Shangri-La restaurant became an American steakhouse and one of the most successful restaurants in all of Andorra. And I worked for them for that winter. And then halfway through that winter, I got to know all kinds of people, and especially the ski instructors. And one day I probably very foolishly announced in front of a bunch of ski instructors, I think I'm going to try and become a ski instructor. And one of them shouts out, Chalky, you'll never be a ski instructor as long as you've got a hole where the sun doesn't shine. And I thought, obviously I took that thought away with me. I thought, wow, maybe he's right. But I just knew that that's what I really wanted to do. And the next time I was back there, after I went to work in Germany as an encyclopedia salesman, would you believe? And here's a little story about that. Very few people want to be a door-to-door encyclopedia salesman. Young people these days probably don't even know what an encyclopedia salesman is with all the electronic stuff, right? But anyway, I go for an interview for this job, and I go to Germany. And cutting a long story short, I sat outside a door of a young American GI's house, because that's who we were selling to was GIs working on the German economy. I sat outside this door thinking, am I really going to go and knock on this guy's door? And I sat there and I sat there and I sat there for probably an hour. And then I said to myself, but what if I don't? What if I don't go and knock on that door? What will be the repercussions of that? And what if I never knock on one of these doors? And the answer I got was, if you don't, you're going to have to go and tell the biggest naysayer in your life, your father, that you failed. And I sat there and I said, but what if I do? What if I do go and knock on that door? And I got great, well, I might make a sale. I might even eventually make the sale of the year for the company. How good would that be? And see, what happens is between the two questions, the what if I don't, the negative and the positive, is the changes of answers bring about a big emotional change. And that's what happened to me. And I went and banged on the door. And this young GI came to the door, and he was probably in his early 20s. I was 29 at the time. And he said, yeah, what do you need? And I told him. and he invited me in. Cutting a long story short, I actually made the sale. On the first door that I ever knocked on, I made a sale. I go back to the hotel and I see my manager. This is in Germany, by the way. I think I already said that. I went back and I said to my manager, he wants me to go back the next day to talk to his wife, and present to her as well. And the manager said, another naysayer. My life's full of naysayers, by the way. All the way through my life, I've had people saying, you can't do this and you can't do that. And the manager said, nobody ever buys it the next day. Well, anyway, we were moving the next day to another area. And we happened to be driving through the village where I'd been the night before. And the manager said, you got 20 minutes. So I was out of the car, banged on the door, and the guy come in, yeah, come on in. I used my real name, Bernard, because so few people at first, they don't understand Chalky, so I use my real name. Come on in, Bernard. Well, I made a presentation to him again and to his wife, and they bought it. And I did that job for 11 months. I became a manager, had my own team, and earned enough money in 11 months to take me back to Andorra, not have to work a season, and just skied and skied and skied, and then went 1,500 miles from Andorra near Spain all the way up to Scotland, took my very first ski instructor's exam, and I passed. And it would be the only time out of 3 levels of ski instructor, the only time I ever passed the first time. And basically, I was a ski instructor then for the next 40 years, but with all kinds of different failures. It took me 8 attempts to pass 3 exams. But again, my what-if questions, the negative and the positive, would save me over and over again. So briefly, that's my story.
Man, you gave us a lot to unpack there. How did you get the nickname Chalky?
Well, my last name's White, and are we allowed to use the vernacular on this show?
Go ahead.
Maybe I shouldn't. When I was 16, the first day I joined the police cadets in 1964, right? We were all in the gymnasium, all dressed in our gymnasium kit, with the boys I joined with, and a sergeant came in, carrying a stick under his arm, and he's in full uniform, with a slash bill on his cap, and he's asking everybody. He's going around asking everybody their names, and he came to me and he said, "What's your effing name?" I said, "White, sir." He said, "Lads," he said, talking to all the other boys that are in the room. He said, "We got a Chalky White." Because Chalky's white, Chalky White. That's how it came about.
Huh. Interesting.
So what? I'm universally known as that. In the ski school where I worked for many years, hardly anybody knew my last name. I'm just Chalky. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to become an author and leave behind being a ski instructor?
Well, I didn't actually leave behind being a ski instructor. I just got old. I'm 78 now. So, I was a ski instructor full time pretty much until I was 70, and enjoyed every minute of it. But we decided, unfortunately, my little wife, Lynn, she has Parkinson's disease. So I met her, and we lived in the Colorado mountains for years together. But she got Parkinson's, and we realized that she did much better in warm weather than she does in the cold weather. So that's why we moved here. And of course, that made it much more difficult for me to actually be a full-time ski instructor. I still occasionally teach. If someone makes me an offer I can't refuse, I'll still teach. Still do some teaching, yeah, of course. And how did I become an author? Well, down the years, I'd realized that in the ski business, sometimes there'd be an awful lot of drivel about technique, spoken. And I knew that a lot of this stuff was being spoken about wasn't very accurate. So I decided to I don't know if I told you this, but I wrote a book, a ski instruction book. And how that came about was I just decided to write one, started to write, and I kept writing, but I couldn't come up with a title. And one day I was on a ski lift. Actually, the guy I was on a ski lift with, you might know of. Have you ever heard of a man called Howard Lutnick?
Nope.
He is now the Secretary of the Economy in the Trump administration.
Huh.
But he was my ski client for 12 years. Anyway, I'm on a lift with him and another guy. And they said, "What's the title of the book going to be?" And I said, "Skiing and the Power of Balance." And this guy said, "That is so boring." So I said, "Well, if you've got any better ideas, I'm all ears," right? So anyway, 2 days later, I'm on the lift with the same two guys again. And this guy said, "I got a title for you." I said, "What's that?" He said, "The 7 Secrets of Skiing." I said, "I can't call it that." He said, "Why not?" He said, "There's a little bit of mystique to it." He said, "And there's 7 steps in your book, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "So call it the 7 Secrets of Skiing." And he said, "Are you famous?" I said, "Well, only in my own mind." He said, "But why don't you call it Chalky White's The 7 Secrets of Skiing? And people will think you're famous anyway." So that's what it got called. And that book actually got to, on Amazon, in its category, got to number 1. And I sold over 10,000 copies of that, which is not bad for a book that's not going to have that wide an audience, just skiers only. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
what was probably your biggest challenge when you were writing that book?
trying to make sure that it was accurate. And a good friend of mine, Matt Deem, who is an expert skier and knows an awful lot about skiing, and he and I agree on a lot of stuff. Every time I would write something, I would say to him, "What do you think? Do you think this is accurate or not?" And pretty much every time he came back and said, "Yeah, that is really accurate," And the second book, well, I've had a very interesting life. And in this book that I wrote, Keep Chewing the Granite. Keep Chewing the Granite just basically means never, ever give up. Just never, never quit. How that came about was I decided to write a memoir. And I was going to call the book at first, before I decided it was going to be a memoir, before I decided it was going to become a motivational memoir, I was going to call it "Do They Keep Farm Animals Up Here?" which is a story that's now in the book. But I couldn't call it that if I was going to make it a motivational thing. So that's why I changed it eventually to Keep Chewing the Granite, which was something that was actually said to me when I was laying prostrate in the snow at a ski instructor trainer's feet. And he'd had us skiing down on one ski only. I'd never done this before when I was doing this. And we were skiing this really wet, nasty slush at the end of April in Scotland. And one time I'm going down, and I land, I fall over at Jimmy Smith's feet, my trainer. And he looked down at me, and in his Scottish accent, he said, "Just keep chewing the granite, Chalky." And I never, ever forgot that. And basically, I've been chewing the granite ever since. And that kind of obviously relates to my what-if questions as well, because it's the what-if questions that really help me and have also helped others to overcome adversity and be able to go on and realize the major dreams in their life. Because there's so many people in this world that have big dreams but never actually fulfill them because they just procrastinate, just like I did for a long time. They procrastinate and procrastinate and procrastinate. And most never actually realize those dreams, unfortunately. So the part of the big idea of it turning my book into a motivational thing was to give people ideas on how they could use the what if questions to actually help them to achieve what they wanted to achieve in their lives.
Yeah. Can you tell us the two what if questions again?
Yeah, there's a negative and there's a positive. The first one is, what if I don't? And the second one is, what if I do? And it's important. You can use them the other way around, but it's best to, I've always found it most effective to use them that way around, because you get these terrible answers usually when you ask the what if I don't. What if I don't do this thing that I really want to do? You usually get terrible answers from that question, and you emotionally they kind of get you down. But then when you ask, but what if I do go and do what I really want to do? And you come up with answers, well, this might happen, this might happen, this might happen, and I'll end up doing what I really want to do. And what happens, the key to it is the change of emotions you get from one set of answers to the next set of answers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you haven't used those two questions, have you failed before?
Big time. Big time.
Can you tell us?
Yeah, sure. The biggest one was after I'd been running my own ski school. I decided to run my own ski school. This is way before I came to America, by the way. This is between 1985 and 1993. I decided to leave Andorra and go to France and run my own personal ski school, just have my own clients every week. And that all went very, very well. It worked so well that I ended up hiring another ski instructor for the overflow, because I couldn't it was just impossible for me to teach them all. But then the bad thing that happened was, the worst thing I did really was I decided to get involved with a partner. So we had to kind of expand the business, make it bigger, get more clients, because now, you know, at the time he had a wife and son, and I had my girlfriend and son at the time, and so there was a lot of mouths to feed. So we had to find a way of making money. So we decided that this chalet, this big house that we bought right at the bottom of a ski lift, we had to expand. We needed to expand it, right? So, and that was going to be, you know, a big deal to do that, and it was going to cost plenty of money. But the bad news was I take most of the responsibility for this. I didn't work out the numbers correctly. And as a result, I was the one, even though I started the whole thing, because I'd run out of money trying to pay the construction crew, I was the one that had to leave. And had I said to myself, what if I don't work out these numbers correctly? What can be the repercussions of that? I didn't ask that question. And I certainly didn't answer, but what if I do? What if I do work out the numbers properly? What can be the repercussions then? And the repercussions would have been, in the positive, if I'd have worked out the numbers correctly, we would have probably built something a little smaller, not quite as ambitious, and I might have still been there today. In fact, my ex-partner still lives in that house today, and that partnership broke up in 1993, 32 years ago.
Huh.
So yes, when I didn't use it, could have dire consequences, no doubt. That is certainly by far the biggest one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Who is your book aimed at helping?
Well, obviously, if someone's got ambition to achieve something in their life, whatever that might be, it can really be aimed at anybody, but especially it can be aimed certainly at the young, people early on in their careers, people that are procrastinating in their careers and want to do different things, just as I was, aimed at those kind of people. Certainly, and it could be aimed at salespeople, because perhaps you well know sales, and this is why salespeople tend to get paid the most money in a company. Salespeople, being a salesperson is probably the hardest job in a company. People don't like to sell. And so another way that the what if questions can be used is, what if I don't pick up the phone and talk to this person that kind of scares me a little bit? What might be the repercussions of that for me? And what if I don't ever call this guy or anybody else? What will be the repercussions of that for me? Well, I'll probably lose my job because I'm not making any sales for a start. And I won't be able to buy the house that I was going to buy. I won't be able to take my family on the vacation that I promised they could go on for years. So they're very nasty answers, but if that salesperson takes it a step further, after those very anti-emotional or bad emotional times, and ask, but what if I do call this guy that frightens me, what can happen then? Well, I might end up making a sale. I might even make the sale of the year for the company. I might even get promoted. And if I do all that, I'll be able to buy that house. I'll be able to take my family on that vacation I promised that they could have, etc., etc.
Yeah. What
So
if?
the great thing about it, Ryan, is that it's not complicated. It's simple, and you can do it at any moment in time.
Yeah.
It's just a case of just giving it a little thought and saying, and using that emotional change. Like I said, it's what got me out of procrastinating in the police force for basically 11 years, being a cadet and a policeman, in a job that I despised for years. I just didn't enjoy it. And those questions got me out of that job and helped me to achieve the dreams that I really wanted to achieve.
Yeah. I've also found out that the simpler, the better.
Well, that's right. And that's what I love about this. Anybody can use it. It's not difficult to use at all. It's just a case of concentrating the mind and asking the questions in such a way that, you're going to get, in the end, you're going to get the result that you want, especially from the what if I do question.
Yeah. Well, see, that somebody else wanted to read your book that didn't fall in that niche. Would they find it intriguing and entertaining?
Yeah, because there's all kinds of great stories in it. As I said, it goes from me being an abused, badly educated kid, abused from my mother and all that as well, to becoming a policeman, where I was a policeman and I managed to save the life of a baby that had been abandoned under a bush. Nothing in your life can beat saving the life of another. But also I was witness to a disembowelment murder of a young girl. I was the first police witness on the scene of that. And that's been that story, or that experience has been with me forever. It's something you never forget when you see something like that. That's all described that story's in the book. And all kinds of stories. There's funny stories as well. Perhaps I can tell you a funny story from the book.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just a very short one. It's called A Demure Lady. Well, one day, not too long after I arrived in Beaver Creek in Colorado, which is part of the Vail and Beaver Creek ski school in Colorado, they put me with one lady client. And anyway, we start to go up a chairlift. And it was a 4-person chairlift, and she sat on one end and I sat on the other. And as I would always do, I started to ask questions, what do you want from the lesson? How do you think I can help you? What are the issues going on with and all I was getting out of her was really yes and no. So eventually I just kind of thought, okay, I'll just give it a little break now, and we just carry on up to the top of the lift. Anyway, when we got about 3/4 of the top to the top of the lift, I inadvertently passed wind, as one is prone to do on occasion. Anyway, we get to the top of the lift, and we're standing there, and I'm messing around with our equipment. I'm starting to put my ski poles, the straps of my ski poles on, and saying, we're just trying to suggest the run we go down that stuff. When all of a sudden she blurts out, "Do they keep farm animals up here?"
So she didn't know it was you, at least.
And for once in my life, I was speechless.
That's kind of funny.
And I never did ski with her ever again for some reason. So there's definitely some good comedy in it. There's a lot about, as I said, about my police service. There's an awful lot about my struggles to first become a ski instructor, and then the real trial of trying to become fully certified, because there's 3 examinations, 3 levels of examination. And I always wanted the top one to become fully certified, because then, I could do things like start my own business and all that, and also be allocated clients that skied at a much higher level and that kind of thing, which is my interest has always been in the upper levels and intermediate skier. That's where I always wanted to be.
Yeah.
But it took me 8 attempts, would you believe, to pass 3 ski instructors exam. I only know one other person that's had that kind of trouble. And part of my problem, of course, was I never saw a pair of skis until I was 26 years old. Most ski instructors start when they're little kids. So it was always a tough road for me to get there.
Well, I bet it was. Like you did
all that story of all of that's in the book, and then another story when I was going to write my ski book, once I'd finished the writing of it, I went to see the ski school director, and I said to the ski school director, "Can I use 2 or 3 of the ski instructors for photographic demonstration purposes?" And he said, "Yeah, of course you can." He said, "But you can't be in them." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because you don't ski well enough." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you don't ski well enough." So I went away, and I was obviously pretty dejected for a time, right? Anyway, I told my best buddy, who the guy I said I passed a lot of the what I've written, I passed it through him, and he would always approve it. And I told him this story, and he said, "That is absolutely ridiculous." He said, "That is so inaccurate." He said, "Certainly you ski well enough. You ski as well as anybody just about in the ski school." So what I did was I found my own 3 ski instructors, and all 3 of them happened to be world synchronized skiing champions. In other words, demonstration skiers, people that were great demonstrators. And I was the 4th demonstrator. It was my book, so I thought maybe I should be in this, right? So we got all the photographs taken, and the lady that took all the photographs was also a ski instructor examiner. And she said to me, she said, "You were the only one of the 3 that's not a world champion." She said, "But your hand and arm carriage was better than the other 3. And I went, "Yes." And I went ahead. I asked I asked myself the what if questions again, and said, what if I don't publish this book? What will be the repercussions of it? And of course, the repercussions of it, apart from my own regret, would be that the general public who I wrote it for will never see the information. So I hated those answers. So I asked myself, but what if I do publish it? And of course, I came up with great answers. Well, it's going to get to the people that I really want to see it. That's the main thing. And of course, as I said previously, it went on and sold 10,000 copies, which is pretty good for a ski book. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah.
So right now you're starting going down the path of motivational speaking, right?
I've done some. I've already done some. Not so much recently, but I've done some. I did some for the Stroud Street organization in Stout Street organization in Denver. which is a place where people go that have got themselves into trouble through drugs and alcohol. And I actually gave 2 speeches to them. And I've gave a couple of speeches to businesses down here in Mexico. But I'd like to expand that and perhaps go and start to talk to more people in the States. Again, all about the what if factor and, keep chewing the granite. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
So what's probably the biggest challenge you face doing motivational speaking, and probably the most rewarding part?
Finding clients, I suppose. I mean, that's obviously, it's a good reason to come on to things like your podcast, because people are going to see this. Hopefully business people will see this, sales people are going to see this and think, yeah, maybe this guy's got some good ideas. Maybe he can come and talk to my company, and people can be persuaded that he's actually got a good, very simple way of getting people to achieve. And as I said, particularly with salespeople, I've been a salesperson on a couple of occasions, like I said, selling encyclopedias, etc. And it's very difficult to go and bang on a door and tell someone, I want to sell you this, or pick up the phone and talk to someone who's, might be very difficult to persuade to buy your product. And so if they can find different ways of making themselves go for it, pick up the phone, knock on doors, the better it is going to be for them. And in the end, it's going to be better for them as far as making money, and better for their company because they're going to start making a lot more sales.
Yeah. What's your long-term and short-term goals?
My long-term goals are definitely to get much more into the motivational speaking if I can. That would be, from a professional standpoint. I mean, as I said, I'm retired. I mean, I'm now in a situation where I don't really need to work, but I want to be able to get my message out there. And that's obviously a big reason why I wrote the book. And it's a big reason why I want to be a motivational speaker, and a big reason why I want to get onto podcasts like yours.
Awesome. What about short term?
Short term? Well, as I said, I live on the Mexico. About 10 yards that way is my 25-meter swimming pool. So I use that an awful lot, and I do a lot of laps and stuff like that. I play some pickleball. I'm going to start playing more golf, because the thing is, Ryan, fundamentally I'm a sportsman. That's why I was a ski instructor for 40 years, and I still ski some. I go up to Colorado occasionally, and I still ski with my friends up there. And I can, even at 78, I can still turn the skis a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm pretty lucky, because I'm for a 78-year-old, I'm still pretty fit.
Awesome. How can people get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me several ways, or a couple of ways, really. First one would be through my phone number. Even though I live in Mexico, I have a US phone number. So the United States phone, do you mind if I give that out?
No, go ahead.
Okay. My American phone number is 970-390-6267. Repeat, it will be, if you're outside of the United States, +1, then 970-390-6267. And my email address, which is ChalkyGo, which is, I'll spell it phonetically, so it'll be C Charlie, H Hotel, A Alpha, L Lima, K Kilo, Y Yankee, G Golf, O Oscar @gmail.com. ChalkyGo@gmail.com. And of course, I'm on WhatsApp and a couple of the other things as well. I'm on Facebook.
Awesome.
So I can be found on those things as well. Yeah. So yeah, pretty easy to find. And if people, if necessary, I'm more than happy, if people want motivational speaking, to travel to speak to people as well.
Yeah. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about?
No, not really. I mean, just to let you know that my book, here it is again. Look, Keep Chewing the Granite. There's all kinds of stories in that, from sad to pretty horrific to sometimes very funny and sometimes intriguing. And people that don't particularly need to use or want to use my what if questions, I think will really enjoy the stories. That's the feedback I get an awful lot, is that people say, man, you've had such an interesting life. I'm really glad you wrote this, because it's quite enlightening.
Yeah. Where can people purchase your book at?
On Amazon.com. If they go onto Amazon.com and punch in literally "Keep Chewing the Granite," that will get them to where the book is. There's already quite a few 5-star reviews on there, I'm glad to say. And yeah, I mean, it's very easy to find it. Keep Chewing the Granite on Amazon.com.
Okay. Final question. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
If you can, well, the first thing is, of course, if you want to achieve something and overcome adversity, you really got to want to do it. A lot of people, they will suffer and suffer and suffer and never get over it. But if they really want to, they will find a way of doing it. And one way of doing it, and this is I suppose the big advice I can give, is just try it. Just try to use the 2 what if questions. What if I don't? What if I do? Get that emotional change, and then you will start to get to where you really, really want to be. That's it, really, I think. I think that just about sums it up.
That's some great advice. I love it.
And
well, Chalky, thank you for coming on here and sharing your insight and sharing us details about your book.
Well, no, thank you. And I really appreciate your time, Ryan, and wish you loads of success in the future. And of course, I'm really looking forward to seeing this podcast when it comes out, as well as others that you're making. Thank you again.
Yeah. Hey, you're welcome. Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.